All right, welcome to our Microsoft Licensing Masterclass of today. It's our second session, and we are very happy to welcome you to this webinar. We have more than 200 signups for the webinar as such, filled with customers, partners, and even Microsoft themselves who are going to participate. So our ambition of today is to share a lot of know-how with you, to give some insights in what we do, but mostly in what we do about Microsoft licensing, to give you some good best practice as well, that you understand how licensing is working and how you could even optimize your own environment. So before we start, we would just like to mention a few general things. Speaking about the recording, it already started. We will do that for our internal purpose to educate ourselves. In regards to questions and answers, feel free to put all your questions into the Q&A section. We will try to answer them throughout the webinar, and there will also be a Q&A session at the end where we will go live into the questions and hopefully have a lot of interesting ones to answer to you. After the webinar, we will also request you for feedback. We would like to constantly improve, so we would really appreciate to get the feedback at the end from you as well. And before we start, there is Christopher Andenmatten and myself presenting in this webinar, that you know a bit who we are. We are actually the two founders of Sation, and we are within Microsoft licensing both more than 10 to 15 or even more years, and really passionate about Microsoft optimization. And yes, let's start with what's up for today. So let's speak about the agenda. Where we are right now is the introduction, but we will also take the chance to tell you a bit about our company Sation. Then the next topic is we will speak about Microsoft contracts. And when it comes to contracts, we would love to speak about the enterprise agreement. And as you can read, we will speak about the game over of enterprise agreements. Not sure if this is the right wording, but we take that really serious. And yes, it has a momentum. And let's speak about it, what we mean with enterprise agreement may goes game over. Microsoft optimization, this is what we love, this is what we do, and we want to give you some insights that you can see how that could effectively work within your organization as well. Then we will speak about M365, comparisons of F3, E3, E5, what we understand about FlexTerm. We will speak about teams and also about FinOps in action, that you can understand, all right, how do we do that within M365? Coming from MC365, we'll go to Azure, speak about Microsoft Azure consumption commitment, reserved instance, savings plans, and other stuff to give you some insights. And yes, FinOps again, to understand what's important, how could that have an impact for you. And last but not least, we will speak about technical support, unified support from Microsoft, what it is, what it means, and also how it compares to third-party support. And as already mentioned, we will speak about your questions, so in the Q&A section at the end. All right, let's get it started. First, with Sation as our company. So Sation actually stands for everything around Microsoft in relation to licensing, FinOps, and optimization. And what we drive in reality is unlock value, reduce cost, and ensure sustainability. What does it mean? When we speak about reduce cost, it's really about to evaluate, all right, what does your company really need now and in the future based on effective usage. Based on those insights, we then design the right licensing strategy with the target to make sure you can execute your strategy, but also to reduce cost. And while you're evaluating your cost reduction possibilities, the other side of the coin is actually, all right, we may have unlocked value. So you will always have the choice to either improve the value you get out of your Microsoft investment in regards to unlocking the value, or to reduce the cost while you adopt a new licensing model, and with the changes you get effective savings. Sustainability is another big topic because first of all, it's about making the strategy, licensing, and the management out of it sustainable. But secondly, also, it's about CO2. We want to make our planet greener, and by measuring effective usage of, for example, M365, we're able to show you what's your CO2 consumption. And by knowing what's the consumption, it also allows us to reduce effective CO2. So when it comes to Microsoft, what does it mean in real world? It means that what we see is Microsoft is increasing costs year over year. But we'll speak more about that topic. So our ambition in that game is pretty clear. We want to help you to do the opposite, reduce costs by clear strategy, by evaluating your demand, and furthermore. And the average yes is 30%. So depending on your case, depending on what the infrastructure look like, your strategy, and so on, it's maybe more or less. We will see. All right. We're lucky to tell you, yes, there are already many good companies we worked with. We have our reference cases, some of the bigger ones, some of the smaller ones, where we actually achieved real savings in all different areas of Microsoft. So as you can see in the corners, we worked on M365, Dynamics, Azure, but also the old on-prem stuff as System Center, Windows Server, and all the other stuff. And as you know, at the end of our meeting today, also about unified support. And as you can read, we did already quite many projects from our own experience, and we're happy to deliver them. Speaking about delivering, we speak about services. So what does Sation actually potentially deliver to you as a customer? What we do is we do optimization as optimization services, but we do also classical advisory, license advisory. We go into FinOps, GreenOps, measuring CO2. We are also able to provide you software and cloud as such, as well as support. And also we could evaluate your unused licenses to get rid of them and monetize them again. So whatever it is about Microsoft, we can actually help you in all different stages. All right. So that's it about Sation and about what we do. Let's focus more on Microsoft licensing. We would like to start with the contracts. And to understand that a bit more, today we have three major agreements. The enterprise agreement, the one we all had in the past, and still a lot of our customers do have enterprise agreements. The Cloud Solution Program, CSP, which is this channel program, and then the Microsoft Customer Agreement Enterprise, MCAE, which is the direct version of the CSP contract, but delivered by Microsoft directly. So what are the differences? Enterprise agreement, traditionally seen, is available for customers of 500 qualified users or devices, or even more. CSP, MCIE, you can have it with one subscription. Go for it. So there is no real minimal requirement. Going further, the enterprise agreement typically has a duration of 36 months, so meaning 3 years. CSP MCIE is a evergreen contract. So once you have it, you can move on with it forever. What is different is actually the license duration. So in the enterprise agreement, the license duration is binded towards the contract duration. In CSP and MCIE, this is not the case. There, every subscription has his own term, meaning it's going up to 36 months, but it could also be lower. We will speak about that soon. When we look at conditions and levels, you do notice that the enterprise agreement has a level A to D, although there is a big change. And there is also conditions in commercial, education, and government, while we in CSP and MCA only offer commercial as well as education conditions. There is no real governmental price. and as well, no price level. So in CSP and MCE, there is one price level fits all. Currencies is a pretty important topic because in the enterprise agreement, the enrollment where it is placed defines the currency. So if you place an enterprise agreement enrollment in the US, it is going to be US dollars. In Germany, it's going to be euros. In Switzerland, it's a special country, you can choose between Swiss francs and euros. But the place you sign the enrollment is defining the currency. In CSP, you can choose in the region. What is most interesting in Europe, because Europe offers customers Great Britain pounds, euros, Swiss francs, NOK, and other currencies. In most other regions, it's mainly US dollars. So, and what is also important is that the MCAE agreement of Microsoft themselves is always restricted to the currency locally available. Meaning in Germany, it's going to be euro, while in Switzerland, it's Swiss francs only. All right. Price protection. In the enterprise agreement, the price is protected over the full contract period. While in the CSP agreement, the price is protected on the subscription and its term. Same applies to the MCAE. License reduction is possible in all three agreements. But what is different, in the enterprise agreement, you can only reduce online subscriptions on an annual basis when you come to the anniversary of your agreement. In CSP and MCAE, you can also reduce all your subscriptions always at the end of a term. Now, Azure, there was already a big shift. So meaning you're no longer or able to renew the enterprise agreement within the enterprise agreement, your Azure consumption. So what Microsoft is going to ask you to is to renew it in MCAE or CSP. In CSP, it's called Azure Plan, closed with a partner, while the discount is normally not bounded to a commitment. In the MCAE, there we normally speak about this MAC agreement, Microsoft Azure Consumption Commitment, where the discount is bounded to a certain commitment. We will speak about that in more details. So what is also different is that support is delivered in the enterprise agreement from Microsoft or the partner. While in the CSP contract, which is a partner-led agreement, it's always the partner. And in the MCAE agreement, there you have also both possibilities again, so you can choose between Microsoft or the partner. With who do you negotiate? In the enterprise agreement, we know that from the past, you're going to negotiate the agreement with Microsoft. The same applies to MCAE. What is really important, because MCAE is really a direct agreement, while CSP is then led through the partner. So there you're going to negotiate with the partner. Now, what's different in the enterprise agreement and the MCAE as well is that the MCAE does not include at all your reseller partner. While in the enterprise agreement, the LSP was always an advisor. In the MCAE, the LSP does not play any role anymore. Now, price benchmarks. That's a tricky one. In the enterprise agreement, historically seen, we had level A to D. So the bigger you get, the lower the price was. There is some change coming up. We will speak about that. But what we already see today is that CSP offers pretty good conditions, meaning the benchmark we see compared to an enterprise agreement is actually between level B to D, depending on the offer you get from your CSP partner. But when it comes to MCAE, variety is still quite big. What we do know is that the estimated retail price is actually their starting point. What is insane, because level E means it's even higher, or the starting point is even higher than level A in the enterprise agreement. So it's all up to negotiation with MCAE. But once conditions run out, you're ending up higher than level A. So let's see. From SA, that's one of the remaining key elements of the enterprise agreement, is only available within the enterprise agreement for customers who already had it, where they can renew it. And last but not least, who's going to invoice it? Since the enterprise agreement is in most countries a direct agreement, it's going to be invoiced by Microsoft. So in the indirect agreements, it's the partner, but that's another story. While MCAE is always a direct agreement and will always be built by Microsoft. CSP, the opposite, that's going to be built by the partner. All right. Speaking about price levels, because this is a really big thing right now. Price levels, the impact is the following. Microsoft announced effectively by November this year, so 1st of November, just a few days ago, level B, C, and D get harmonized with level A. What does that mean? All online services now increased in price. When it comes to level B, it means +6, level C +9, level D +13. So this has a big impact. For now, we do see that effectively on the price list. But in negotiations we're in right now, we can still go back to the October prices. What the big question mark is going to be is in the 2026, when we are not able to go back to October pricings, will we then have effectively higher costs, for example, for a level D customer? Or will we just get higher discounts? We don't know. We will see. But this is one huge topic which is very important at the current stage. As you know, we spoke about enterprise agreement is going to be game over. It's a bold statement. In reality, there is no date which tells us until then the enterprise agreement is here, but there are really clear signals that Microsoft wants the enterprise agreement to fade out. And this is clearly communicated. So meaning, and starting 2020, Microsoft already started to move out Azure of SE and enterprise agreements. But 2023, they even tried to get all Fortune 500 agreements direct, which didn't work out that well. But now in 2025, things become really serious. Meaning, at the beginning of the year was this big announcement that cloud-only agreements would go to MCA. With MCA, I include MCAE and CSP to simplify the thing a bit. And there were furthermore agreements, such as the levels as we discussed before, also the terms which now harmonize between 1 and 3 years. And these are all clear signals which move the commercials towards MCAE. And that's how Microsoft always did it. It's not really about telling customers you can't do an enterprise agreement anymore, but it just isn't interesting anymore to do so. And this journey will most probably go on. For now, there are some missing pieces as from SA or on-prem products, but this will change also over time. So now let's discuss about why this is happening. And I will try to do it a bit from a Microsoft perspective, because this helps us to understand why. So from a Microsoft perspective, the enterprise agreement is an administrative monster. It takes a lot of paperwork. It's really individual and furthermore. And the MCAE in an AI era it's much more automated and allows them to scale much faster. Also, in the enterprise agreement, it's a heavy negotiation. Because in reality, there are a lot of amendments, so every deal needs to be negotiated by a full team and furthermore. And in an evergreen agreement of the MCA, where auto renewals take place, this is going to reduce dramatically. Maybe we will believe that we're going to negotiate at the beginning a lot, but over time, this is going to be reduced. Pretty sure. Now, amendments and supplements, I already mentioned them. They are a headache. Because in reality, if you want to order a new product, you may need a supplemental CPS and so on in an enterprise agreement, what causes a lot of administrative work. And this is a big change in MCA, CSP and MCA. There you actually, if you need a new product, you just add it in your basket and order it. That's self-service management, and that's a dream for Microsoft. So also the enterprise agreement is channel dependent. So all enterprise agreement have an LSP in between, and the LSP is going to earn money. And this is money which goes away from Microsoft. What is true? In the MCA, it's pretty much a direct gain, and this gives them control. But also, this is a major shift because Microsoft acts now as a reseller. So for LSPs and also for partners, the new biggest competitor is Microsoft themselves. And the enterprise agreement is kind of an enterprise-driven motion. It's designed for 2,400 users plus, while the MCE is a one-size-fits-all agreement. And whenever you're able to reduce complexity, to increase standardization, it will offer to the organization of Microsoft a lot of benefits. Now, in the enterprise agreement, what is good for the customer is that the terms are fixed and you have real clarity. In MCAE, this is not the case because you can fix the term but not the contract. Once the term is going to expire, you need to adopt the new pricing models. And what is also there is Microsoft is trying to move as much as possible towards the subscription, Azure subscription. And as soon as a workload is moving from a license, which can be fixed, to an Azure workload within the Azure subscription, pricing is completely flexible. So me and Microsoft can adopt it on the fly. At the end, the enterprise agreement has a high customization benefit, which is great. But on the other hand, from the view of Microsoft, MCA is driving efficiency. With efficiency, they will reduce cost on administrative work, cost on human resources, but while they still increase stickiness, because in the evergreen contract, it's also become more complex to quit it. And by doing all of that, they've increased profitability. And this is their overall target. And yeah, so there are many, many reasons why they do so. And we are pretty sure that MCA and CSP is going to be the future. And the enterprise agreement will fade out. The question will be how fast. We assume that the enterprise agreement will stay for quite a while, since the agreements will run for 3, 4, 5 more years. So it's not going to be the case that it is away by tomorrow, but MCAE in general will gain a lot of importance. All right. Now, when thinking about our next topic of optimization, we would like to speak about the enterprise agreement. In the enterprise agreement, making our example, we have our initial quantity, and you normally used to do true-ups. Now, what you can do is on every anniversary, you have the possibility to do not only true-ups, you can also do true-downs. But what is not a miracle is that at the end of the contract, you do have the highest enablement to optimize your agreement. Because at the anniversary, you can change products and quantities, but at the renewal of contract, you can change the full game. Contract, currency, products, commitments, everything. So this means you have two big momentums to optimize within your agreement, where you can effectively realize commercial savings. This is at the anniversary as well as at the renewal of your contract. Right. This brings me to the next topic, where I would like to hand over to Chris.
All right. So Microsoft optimization. Let's have a look on what happened the last years in terms of price. So when we start in 2022, there was a major increase on E3, on Office and M365. Then we had some prices increases in 2023. What was the currency increase in terms of euro, British pounds, NOK, etc., to outbalance the US dollar. And then 2024, there was nothing. But 2025 kicked in quite hard. Already in the beginning of the year, we had the increase of Power BI Pro and Phone. And also at the end of the year, we had some crucial cases in terms of application servers, core call. And what we also saw is that the PureView suite is becoming more expensive in the EA. Quite interesting, as they changed the name from E5 Compliance to PureView Suite, and they made a price increase without really communicating. And one of the latest announcements is the CSP grace period with the extended service term, where you now have to actively cancel a subscription or activate auto renewal, of course. And if you're not doing one of the other, it goes automatically in an extended service term. This means if you have, for example, an annual subscription, it converts automatically to a monthly subscription plus a 3% price tag on top, just that you can continue to have the service. So it becomes more and more the case that you have to act and you not just can leave it how it is. And it makes it even more complicated if you want to do changes within your environment. Overall, what does it mean? For customers who are coming from a higher level enterprise agreement and now are facing a renewal, you end up paying maybe 20 to 40% more than you had before. And if you have a bit view into the future, we can assume that maybe there will be a price increase on one or the other subscriptions in the future, as we see that the whole additional services are gaining on prices. But not only Microsoft is always the bad guy in this case. So cost, of course, is coming from higher prices, but there's also inflation, currency, exchange rates, etc. Next to that, we have, of course, also the complexity, which is increasing. This means that we have new products, new features. And when we look back historically, where we only had to license core call, a bit of Windows on the Office, and now we are coming in a full digital world with Teams and communication, Power Platform, etc., it becomes much more complicated to get the right product and bundles, which leads up then that you get maybe the wrong information from your reseller or your advisor, because their major goal is not to give you the right product and cover your demand. It's really going into the direction, say, okay, what can we sell you more just that we get our revenue in? So next to that, we have also know-how, which is becoming more and more important in terms of licensing. And the overall growth in your company is also one of the topics we can lead to higher costs. And there we're not just looking at natural growth in terms of more user. It can be also just cloud consumption, which is growing just because you need to have more management behind it. What is our ambition? So we have now seen why it's so important to start having the cost visible, controlled, and optimized. And our ambition is, of course, to reduce this cost. And we are pretty successful when it comes to optimizing costs. In average, we save our customer 30%. And how do we do that? There's one area to say, okay, the strategy and roadmap needs to align with the investment, with the licensing, etc., which then also comes to have the right profiles, the right flexibility to then also increase or decrease the products you want, to have the right usage tracking in place. And next to the usage, we have, of course, the commercial part, which means that we have to negotiate, have the right agreement, the right currency, etc. And to dig a bit deeper in this whole topic, how does cost happen? So first of all, we have usage. Everything what we consume, it can be licenses, subscriptions, software assurance, vessels, whatever, multiplied with the rate. So the price tag behind the subscription or resource or whatever, multiplied gives us the cost. And if we want to reduce the cost, we have to reduce either the rate or the usage. And when we have a look on the usage, there are a few different ways how we can do it. Let's assume we have an environment and we want to optimize usage. For this user part, we can do this with user profiling, activity management. This means active users, inactive users, profiling, and then also have the right product in place. So when we know the profiles, we also have to assign the right product. It's not just done by saying, okay, this is a frontline worker, and we still keep the knee free. That doesn't make really much sense. Then we have anomalies. We have also maintenance mentions when it comes to the on-prem environment. And down below, we have here features in regards of Azure resources or public cloud in general, where it comes to use modern solutions to make environments more efficient, but also more scalable. In the area of resources, we have also regions. This is also a way just to say, okay, let's assume you have Microsoft Fabric consumed in Switzerland, price tag 1,000. You can get the same service just by hosting it in North Europe for 800 Swiss francs, for example. So just by changing the region, you can reduce your cost on the resource level. Then we have, of course, commitments. This can be a commitment on the subscription level. It can be a monetary commitment. It can be also on the resource level, say I commit for a certain compute capacity, a dedicated resource, or also on licenses. This means if I, for example, purchase licenses in another agreement, I can bring them into Azure and use them also there to have a better condition on my price on the resource. Next to that, we have the contract. And one thing which many of us focus, especially in the procurement part, is the discount, of course, which can be negotiated. Currency is a huge leverage that we can say, let's buy in another currency to get the better cost tag behind it. In the world of Azure, we have also dev test offers, which enables us to get better discounted prices on resources. And these are all things we can use to reduce the cost at the end. So now we know how to do it, but we also have to really realize it. This means when we have now here the overview, the roadmap, how we can realize such stuff, let's assume there are 8 months to go until we have the renewal. And first of all, we start with the classic project management. This means we have a kickoff where we collect all data. This means there can be a CPS, the MLS report, contract information, responsible people, etc., which we then need to define also milestones, deadlines, and have the project right on time to get also everything closed at the right point. What we heard before, the technical part, the usage part, starts with the connection with the API. This means we collect the data via an app, cloud app from your tenant to create the FinOps reports, which allows us to have a deep view on your effective usage of your Office 365 products. This gives us then a clearer indicator in which direction it goes in terms of usage. This is then combined with demand evaluation. This is a workshop. It can be 1, it can be up to be 8 workshops, depending on how complex your environment is and what topics we have to dig in deeper. This helps us then to understand the technical demand based from the business and your IT. And then we combine this information with from the usage report. This allows us to create different solutions which really match your demand. And we do all these calculations within a scenario file. This means we have always a comparison from where you come from to different solutions which are possible based on effective data, your strategy, and the demand from your business. So this gives us then all opportunities from which you can decide of at the end. When we have the technical part, we have also the commercial part. This means, okay, we now have the indicator, let's assume you have an EA, and we would go again for an enterprise agreement. We are able to calculate based on the current prices what it would cost. This means we have a first benchmark and gives us an indicator in which direction it goes. But as soon as we have the different solutions, we can create the BOM, the bill of materials. This means we know which products you need. We can start our negotiation based on the real demand and request a first offer. But before we do that, we need a BATNA. This means a best alternative to negotiate agreement, because without really a BATNA, it becomes really difficult to be in a strong position in the negotiation. And this is something we work out together with you, that you have a good position, get the agreement you want, and that you have the products you want in your agreement for the best price. And yeah, as you can see here, the first offer is not always the best one. It can be 1, 2, 3. It can even be more, that at the end that you get the contract or the final offer which fits best your expectations. The whole stuff is also covered with the legal part. This means when you're ready, you know what kind of agreement you want. Let the legal check it if everything is fine, and then you're good to go. And as soon as the renewal happened, it really feels like you have to start again, because now with new agreements and the options that you can reduce the license, there you have always every year the possibility to check, okay, is the usage what I have the right one? And can I do some adjustments? Means, can I reduce activity of the users, so remove inactive users, or do I have maybe an other demand which is coming up? And then is the question, how do I can implement it in my running contract and make it the most cost efficient? And this is something we can do on a recurring base. Here's an example. We had a carve out from Sandoz, who was integrated in Novartis, and there we have been able to save them more than $7 million per year. What is quite a nice amount of money, which is coming out of just a carve out. And this shows already the potential, which is on the customer side to really have some savings in place. Yeah, thank you. Michael, again, back to you.
All right, thank you, Chris. Going to Microsoft 365 licensing. We would like to first show you some differentiation between M365 F3, E3, and E5. We will do that on a high level. So what's the difference? Starting with the base Windows, it actually offers Windows Enterprise in all 3 different bundles. There are some limitations in F3, but we'll speak about that on the next slide. But the edition Enterprise is available in all bundles. Speaking about the collaboration platform Exchange, SharePoint, and Teams, the major differentiation is the 2 GB threshold. Meaning, if you want to go with the F3 version, then your mail storage and file storage is restricted to 2 GB per user, what is one of the key things. Going to the next topic, it's Office itself. So what many of us are used to is using Excel, PowerPoint, and Outlook and all those apps as a desktop application. This is actually Microsoft Apps for Enterprise. If you're happy with using M365 web or mobile app, meaning you consume, for example, Excel within the browser, if this is fine for you, then F3 would be the one to go. Now, assuming that we have a lot of office workers or office workers in this calls, most of us will most probably use apps for enterprise. But just thinking about other categories as production workers or people working in the hospital, or for them, it's maybe fully sufficient to work within the browser. So for those cases, F3 is absolutely a possibility. Then when it comes to management, enterprise mobility and security, so Intune and Entra and all those stuff, actually all the functionalities are available in all three categories. There are some details, but the base functionalities are available in all three bundles. So now what's the difference then from E3 to from E3 to E5? So one of the major topics is compliance and security. So if you want to have an advanced compliance and security features activated within your tenant on your E5 users, you need E5. This is what it is. And in addition to that, one of the main points is also as soon as you're going to use Teams Phone or Power BI, it potentially leads you to license E5. But just to bear in mind, if you may do not use compliance and security, but your user is going to use Teams Phone, you can also say, all right, I'm going to license M365 E3 and take Teams Phone as an additional application. You don't necessarily need to license E5. So you need to understand what's my demand and what's the commercial outcome out of it. So just because of Teams Phone, it would most probably not make sense. But if you need more technology and you're really using it, then May E5 is the better choice. As well as negotiation games need to be played in that position, but you need to first figure out what is my demand for what kind of user group. As I said, F5 does come with some restrictions. So what is it then? In reality, it means you have to be in one of those use cases. Either you're working on a shared device. Making an example again, you're working in production, you have a shared PC there where more production people are working on simultaneously. So this is one of the use cases. Or you're going to have smaller devices below 10.9 inches, and this results actually in the use case that you're also qualifying for this F3 license, what is actually standing for frontline, where the F is coming from. So it's either or. You don't need to match both criteria. One of them is enough. So making a more concrete example. We, for example, have an office worker within our production company as an example. The office worker, I'm just making assumptions, best fit would maybe M365 E3. Okay. Then to some extent, we may have power users. These power users use more technology, so we could give them an E5. What we need to make sure is how we differentiate them. For example, as Active Directory groups, how we can then also manage license assignments. So, but not everyone is an office worker or a power user. So in our production, we have production workers. Production workers, for example, as I said before, work at shared devices and do not have the same needs as an office worker. So F3 could be the perfect fit. Now, in many companies, M&As, so merger and acquisitions are going on. And while you're going to integrate such companies, not in every case everything is fully managed by the headquarter. So in those cases of integration, it could be the case that you just include collaboration on SharePoint and OneDrive. So then you don't really need to license the full stack. You could also just decide, yeah, then let's, for example, license Office 365 E3. So you can even go for a lower bundle. What we also recognize is shared mailboxes. Now you may ask yourself, yeah, why do we go with shared mailboxes? And the reality is pretty simple. We do see a lot of shared accounts qualified as office workers. And the point is here, find your shared mailboxes, migrate them to shared mailboxes and save the licenses because you don't need them normally. And what you also need to think about is additional applications. Because as I said before as well, Teams or Copilot or Visio is not a standard in most cases. So treat them as additional applications, meaning, for example, Visio will only be provided to the ones who really need it, but it does not really affect the standard of your user design. So that's how we could do it, a bit simplified, but this is how it would look like in real life. Speaking about M365, what were other changes? In 2023, Slack had a court case with Microsoft trying to fight for the right to get it easier to sell Slack. Because what was the problem is that Microsoft introduced Teams back then and just included Teams into the M365 bundles. So it was available to many, many customers, and it gave Slack a hard time to sell their own solution. This is actually what happens to many, many technologies in compliance, in security, and others. Just thinking about McAfee and Symantec, who once were pretty secure, and now Microsoft is taking over more and more. But in regards to Teams, there was this court case, and actually Slack won the deal. So Microsoft had to exclude Teams. And since November, so also just right now, this came to a conclusion in front of court. And now Microsoft is allowed again to include Teams to M365. This is just an important change because it affected many customers. So from now on, you're able to order it as a bundle again. So good news here to reduce complexity. Now, what's next? We speak about this CSP terms. And we invented the term flex term, and we want to explain it shortly. So coming back to the CSP contract, and assuming we would like to order an M365 E3 license, we have the possibility to either close it for 1 year in a 1-year term or for 3 years. So now the difference is if you're going to order it in a 3-year term, the price will be locked for 3 years. Thinking about the fact that the cost is going to increase, this could have a benefit for us. But thinking about when you can reduce the quantity, you just need to be aware that if you're going to lock it for 3 years, you can't reduce it for 3 years. This is the downside of CSP and MCAE. So now if you're clever, what you could do is order the minimum quantity, what is 100, on a 3 years term, and the rest you're going to order on a 1-year term. After the 1-year term, you can either go for another one, whatever term, or you can actually co-term it with your existing 3-year term, benefit from the locked price, and have still same durations of your running subscriptions. It just gives you a bit more flexibility. The only thing you need to keep in mind, be aware on to manage it, because if you're not going to do so, you're just going to apply the new term with the new cost, whatever it will be. All right. This actually leads me to Microsoft 365 FinOps. It's how we do it internally. So what we're doing is we're following the FinOps Foundation framework, and we're working strictly on the practice and form optimized, not pray. So without speaking about a lot about the theory, let's speak about how it would look like in real life. So what you see here is actually our M365 FinOps dashboard based on the API to the M365 Admin Center, where we get real usage data. On the left-hand side, you can see the cost also with the evolution over the months. And on the right-hand side, there is CO2 based on utilization of the solutions of M365. And this gives us transparency where we can work on optimizing. Looking into the contract, also the evolution, but we can also see what is assigned and what not. We can break it down to the different products, and we can also see the details. 144 E3 licenses assigned, available, nothing assigned, everything is unassigned. So there is a potential. Going to active management, we're able to detect disabled users, also inactive users, non-active users, others, what helps us to optimize license assignments based on your users. And we can see here how it evolves and how it improves. Profiling is a big thing, and what we do is we drive it on data. So it allows us to reduce licenses based on effective usage data. As you can see here, what comes from the M365 Admin Center tells us how many sent, read, and received mails, how big the storage is, how many chats, meetings, or what else we have on a user basis. But we also have anomalies. Let's take the example. Here we have a user signed with E5 and AAD Premium P1, so Enter P1. What is a double licensing? This is just an anomaly, and we tell customers, all right, here you would need to have to optimize the assignment. As simple as that. But we'll also speak about additional products, dynamics, project, whatever you have. And there we're going to utilize, do you need it or not? We can break it down in every single product to give you clarity into it. And as I said, we're also measuring CO2 based on usage. But here, let's move on to an example. Same again, we have 12,000 users. With the 12,000 users on M365 E3, in average, we would consume within 1 year 959 tons of CO2, but it's quite a lot. First of all, we give visibility and we give some comparisons because I guess for all of us, it's quite heavy to understand what does it actually mean. But 45,000 trees is a lot, right? But yeah, you have 12,000 users working on that. So yes, there is a big consumption on CO2. Now, by the practice, we know how we can improve mainly storage, what is one of the biggest key things. We do know that we can, with pretty simple steps, reduce CO2 consumption by 25% or even more. And just to give you an idea, 25% of this use case would reflect 40 soccer fields of trees. And this is crazy. Who could do that? It's actually you. In cooperation with us, it doesn't take us ages. It's quite simple to execute. And I'm really sure we will be much faster than we could ever buy an electric car or put some solar panels on our own roofs. So if we want to do something good, then let's do it together because this is pretty easy to do it. And by the way, we implement that to all our services. So we try to do it as a standard. All right. Moving on to the next topic. Chris, it's about Azure again, and here you go. It's your turn again.
Yes, we heard now a lot of M365, now about Azure. And to get a better idea, how does Azure work? So let's build our building, and let's assume you want to start with Azure. The first thing you need is, of course, a contract, something where you consume your resources through. This can be either direct, indirect, whatever. And there are some points you should be looking at when you go into a contract. This means, what are the terms? How does the price look like? Do I get a discount? Are dev test offers possible, etc., etc. As soon as I have the contract, I can order a subscription and start consuming my resources. And the cool thing is you have a huge area of products which you consume from, even not only Microsoft products, it can be even from Marketplace, etc. And here are also some points where you can do some optimizations with. As soon as you have the resource level done, you can start with commitments. You can commit on resources, capacity, on pre-purchase plans. You can even bring your own license to reduce the cost. And as soon as we have everything covered, we could also think about support. So support is not a topic which comes at the end. It's a topic which is at any time relevant. But what you can consider is to say, okay, do I really need a professional direct support? Do I need the unified support? Can it even be just a basic one? Can I have just engineering support? But one major thing what you should look at is here. This is FinOps, and this is not something technical support or engineering support. It's more like a cost management support. Let's say it like that. This means as soon as you start your journey on Azure, it becomes more and more relevant to have also the cost visible and controlled. At the beginning, it's always easy. Then, yeah, there's nothing there to control. But as soon as you start to use this new world more and more, it becomes more and more relevant to you to have it under control. So many of you are in an EA, and there, of course, you was historically the case that you had an EA Azure. When you're now coming to a renewal, you go under the MCA, and under the MCA, you have the option between an MCA E or a CSP. So a direct agreement or an indirect. And within the MCA E, there is the possibility of a MAC, a Microsoft Azure Consumption Commitment. Now we have here a scenario. The last 12 months, this customer had a consumption of 2 million. This means over 36 months, this leads to a baseline of 6 million. And there are some migrations planned throughout the next 3 years. Okay, this means we do a forecast, which means 10 million is what we want to commit. And for this commitment, we get discount of 6%. Everything fine, everything fulfilled, we get our discount, we fulfill the commitment, and everything is good to go. What happens if we consume more? If we had an overspend? In terms of commitment, not really something. The discount is also applied to this overspend. The only thing you may have missed out is that you maybe get 1% more, maybe to 7 or 8% discount if you knew that you really would end up with maybe 11, 12, 13 or whatever million dollars or Swiss francs. Now a different scenario. What if we do not reach the 10 million? Let's start here. Okay, everything is good. We still have our 2 million per year. We start some migrations, but management decided not to migrate all the stuff. Some resources will stay on-prem. So we will end up not here where we wanted. It's a bit lower. Then we realized, okay, the architecture we had is not that modern. It was a classic lift and shift. We start modernization, have other resources, solutions in place, which leads then to reducing the costs. And after the second year, we think, there would be also the option to do commitments, means reservations, savings plans, etc., which will lead again to a reduction of our costs. What happens? 5 million over 3 years, commitment not fulfilled. So we are missing our gap of 5 millions. Now you could think, okay, Microsoft will send me an invoice of 5 million at the end of the 3 years, but that's not the case. You will have another 12 months grace period, but unfortunately without discount, where you have to consume 5 millions. And if you do not do so, let's assume you have just consumed for other 2 millions or 3 millions, and you're missing out 1 or 2, then Microsoft will just send you an invoice for the gap because you have committed to these 10 millions. Reformation, we have solutions that even if you get just down to these 5 millions, there are ways to get up to this and even make your position into the negotiation with Microsoft even better. But this would extend now this session. But there are solutions which we can offer. For all EA customers on top, we had in April 2023 a price increase of 11% on all currency for euro, British pounds, Norwegian kroner, etc., which means that Azure became more expensive. So that wasn't that cool. So for every customer who renewed or closed an agreement before April 2023, there was no price increase affected. And for the others, there was a price increase. But the funny part is, when we look now into the future, the currency from USD became weaker and weaker, which led then that we will realize 8% savings on the Azure consumption. And why is that the case? Because when we go in an MCAE or CSP, the US dollar is the base for all the other currency. This means Base currency is USD, and the tenant location defines what currency you will build in. This means, for example, when you have your tenant located in Switzerland, base USD, FX rate to Swiss francs, and then you will get billed in Swiss francs. The FX rate will always be fixed by the end of the month for the following month. So it changes on a monthly base. So as long as the currency goes down from USD, and this is one positive effect of Trump, that he's ruining the US dollar. And this means that we from the Euro part can benefit from better currencies for Euro, British pounds, or even Swiss francs in the Azure world. What's pretty cool. This formula is already known from before, but now a bit more focused on Azure. When we see this on the usage level, yeah, we have again right sizing, modernization, unused resources, meaning removing unused storage from VMs, use modern solutions, maybe reduce the availability, consume it in different regions, will end up in lower costs. Doing commitments and also the rate in terms of discount, currency, dev test can help to reduce the cost. So usage, it's sometimes not that easy to realize in terms of savings because you also depend a bit of the business, of the provider, etc., etc. But something what you really easy can adjust is with commitments. This means for all predicted capacity we know, we can start to use reservations, savings plans, or Azure Hybrid benefits, all we heard in terms of commitments. And the other part, the unpredicted part, the capacity, which we don't know how the future looks like, we keep it in the pay-as-you-go. What example could be there is if you have a dev test environment, you don't start to do reservations in a dev test environment because you don't know how long you will use this environment. So this is a typical area where you can do pay-as-you-go. But what you can do there is, for example, do an auto shutdown of certain resources to then reduce the cost in terms of usage. So there are also possibilities there to reduce the cost. Let's start a journey. So the life of a resource starts normally on-prem when you come from an on-prem environment. So let's look, there's a small application environment on a physical host with 3 VMs, some SQL, some storage, and the utilization is currently at the 40% average. So let's go and migrate it to the cloud. Standard lift and shift, easy, Azure migrate, put it up in the cloud. Okay, now we are cloud consumers and no longer on-prem. We are modern, but that's not the thinking of modern, because now we are just having clear a subscription, a resource group, and this resource are running in this resource group. And yeah, we have operational efficiency, maybe a bit higher availability, but in terms of cost, it's still the same. So we start to do usage optimization. We start right-sizing the VMs. We are doing blob storage. We are doing read access gear redundant storage. We can do a database on an elastic pool. This means a PaaS service. So there are ways to use features in the Microsoft Azure world that helps us to even make it more efficient, more elastic, dynamic, and increase the availability. So you start to use the cloud more and more efficient. And this helps us already to get down to 70% cost index. As soon as we have done that, we can start with the rate optimization. This means with the commitments, with the Azure Hybrid benefits for Windows and SQL, maybe use some spot instances for the non-critical workloads, which helps us then to come down to the cost, to a cost index of 40%. So what does it mean? We started with 100% and came now down to 40%, which leads then to a cost optimization of 60%. And if you really can do this with all our resources, which we have, and move them to the cloud, then cloud starts to make sense and also starts to make fun. Else, it's just another way to consume for the same price tag, and there's not really a benefit behind it. So here I have a quiz for you. There are 3 bubbles and 3 tags, and then think about where would you do the tag in terms of the optimization potential. I give you 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Ta-da! And what we see, the potential for optimization is the biggest when it comes to rate. This means when I start to do reservations, it can lead up to 70% on the resource level, and in general, overall, to a total cost savings of 40%. Second, usage, and the small dot, the 5%, this is the discount on the contract level. Now you're starting maybe to think, okay, why do I focus so much on the contract? This is because it's the way Microsoft can adjust you or lead the conversation, because it's difficult for them to start optimizing with reservations or usage because they have no control over it. What they can control is the contract and the discount. And this is why most of you or the people from purchase teams focusing on the contract and not on this area. But this is also the area where we can do with FinOps the biggest effect on the cost. And this comes to the next topic, Azure FinOps. And when we look at the principles, as the domains, areas where we can do stuff and the capabilities, what we heard is before from Michael is these 3 phases: inform, optimize, and operate. And this happens on a recurring base. This means the phases will not only happen once, it can be in a certain cadency. This means monthly, quarterly, semi-annual, whatever, depending on how dynamic your environment is. So let's start with the inform part. Inform part means creating visibility of your costs, of your spends, of tagging, also seeing the strategy, means how is the forecasting look like? Are we on budget? How does it look with migrations, modernizations, etc., etc. When we know where we stand and where we want to go, we can start with the optimization. And this area we heard now already enough about usage and optimizations. This is then the second step, what we can do. Operate means also then to realize the stuff we identified and also to manage them. This means, yeah, cool, we started to reserve an instance for 1 year or 3 years, but what's happening of this 1 year or this 3 years? Do I still need it? Is there maybe another one? Can I exchange the reservation? Do I need maybe savings plans? Is there maybe a SaaS solution for the environment I have? So this is all I need also to consider, plan, and track so that I'm able to bring it up again in my visibility in the inform phase, then optimize it again, and then operate. What we also have here is the management part. This means enablement of engineers, practitioners, etc., and also have the full control of the FinOps part. It can be with support of an external partner, with internals, etc., which then means that you have the full coverage of a FinOps in your environment. When we do that, we are working in a Kanban model. This means that we create a backlog of opportunities which we see in the environment, we plan them, we run them, and at the end we review them too to see, okay, has this been implemented the correct way? Is it how we want? And at the end we can close it. Close means that we can also afterwards have like a track record of what we have done and also see, okay, how many savings have you realized in a certain period? It can be for the 1 year, for a quarter, or whatever. It depends a bit on how long the sprint is. This is from my side. Back to you, Michael. Technical support.
All right, thank you, Chris. Speaking about technical support, we would like to focus on the unified support from Microsoft. And what you can see on the screen right now is actually what it combines. So in reality, the biggest part of the unified support comes from the technical support as such, meaning opening incidents in severity A to C or priority 1 to 4, however you want to call it. But it's surrounded by other topics as well. So service managed by the customer success account manager, what is also a big thing because that's the guy who or the woman who is mostly within your organization. But there are other things, health checks, assessments, learning paths, advisory by phone, which come with the unified support. The majority, as I said, is the technical support as such. The question for yourself is whether you have one or not, but how are you using those different services? In addition to the top services, you also have the proactive services for solution engagements, reviews, and also enhanced solutions where you can have direct engineering support. For the ones below, it's important to understand that they are paid on a flex allowance, meaning these are specific credits allowed to do engineering hands-on jobs where Microsoft is going to support you. But the question is really, how do you use it? Because at the end, unified support is going to cost some money, and there is quite a big change. Let's look at how the unified support is weighted and charged in regards to cost. So what we take therefore is actually the annual spend. By the annual spend, Microsoft is applying a percentage based on the spend you have with Microsoft in its contract, diversified in Azure, infrastructure, and the user modern work part. So, taking an example, if you have 1.5 million spent annually on Azure, it would apply 10%. So 1.5 by 10% means 150,000. Let's break that down to a bit more realistic scenario that you can evaluate, all right, what does it really mean? So in reality, in our 12,000 user example again, it means that for modern work, the cost would be approximate 4.8 million. On Azure, in our assumption, again, 1.5 million. On-prem remaining infrastructure, 1.2 million. A total spend per year on the 7.5 millions towards Microsoft. Now, the math is pretty simple. Based on the table you saw before, Microsoft would now take the percentages. So 6.5 for modern work, 10 for Azure, and another 10 for infrastructure on-prem servers, resulting in an overall cost of unified support of 582,000. What is a pretty big number, meaning 7.8 in an average relation towards your overall cost. Now, difficult to judge whether 582,000 is a lot or not. You would need to ask yourself, all right, what's the value I get out of that service? And one thing which is pretty simple to measure is count the tickets you have throughout the last 12 months. Now, in a simplified world, as I show it here, I'm just assuming that I would have had 126 tickets in whatever severity level, and dividing the overall cost by 126, coming to the result that the average ticket would have cost me 4,612 a ticket. What is most probably a pretty big number. So I want you to judge on that. But just to give you some insight from the experience we have as well, I mean, the average cost comes from the overall number divided by the tickets. Now, the amount of tickets in this case then becomes very important. And 126 tickets seem to be low. But the reality, what we see in most customer cases, a customer with 12,000 users typically would have around this amount of tickets. And we even made it a bit optimistic, meaning we even put it there most probably even a higher number than we normally see. So ask yourself, You can download that from your portal if you have unified support and have a look at it yourself. Now, what's also important is the 582 is not negotiated. This is right. So you can negotiate that amount. But I'm not sure how much you will be able to negotiate. There will be some discount for sure. I hope you will achieve that. But there is one major change you made the last few times you did so. What you were always able to add to the unified support are, for example, software assurance benefits, but they're not there anymore. And since they're gone, you can also not reduce them from this bill. So that's a major shift in the negotiation. So it needs to be a real discount and not just a deduction by the SA benefits. So what we see is that often the cost of unified support is not necessarily in relation to the value you need. So what comes up out of that is the question, how does that work out if we compare Microsoft Unified Support with third-party support? To be honest, I didn't write anything down here because it's difficult to judge. I mean, one thing is cost. So speaking about cost is that, yes, our experience is Microsoft Unified Support is quite pricey. So the cost is most probably higher than the third-party support. Most probably is maybe even a bit the wrong word. In most cases, it's a huge difference. But that's something you would need to evaluate. So we want to motivate you, challenge it. Ask for your competitive pricing from a third-party support because it will give you two things. I mean, one thing is it's a benchmark, and the other thing, you can use it also for negotiation because if you want to bring the value 582 down, then go in and support and negotiate your amount, your cost, and therefore the third-party support is going to help you. But also think about, all right, what's the value I get out of it? So maybe it's measured in quality. And I don't want to judge how you experience the quality of your unified support, but maybe the third-party support is equally good or maybe even better, depending on the service provider you're going to choose. But in most cases, it's definitely valuable to evaluate that cost. But also, what we also see is it's an emotional topic. In reality, if money wouldn't matter, would I close it with the vendor I procured the software from? Most probably yes. And this belief and this emotion leads many customers to actually buy the unified support of Microsoft. Hmm. Because it, in many cases, feels like an insurance. But is it really an insurance? I'm not sure. I would question that. And yes, our mission is to support customers to reduce costs. So we're also challenging that part. And at least we want to make sure that the unified support comes with the right price tag, which is equal to the value you receive. So make sure you have everything in your hand to negotiate your agreement. All right. Slowly coming to the conclusion of today's webinar. What we would like to do is opening up now shortly for a Q&A session. So therefore, feel free to put in whatever question you have within the Q&A session, and my colleagues will then come up with the questions. We'll give you some time to may.
Michael, we have one question. So when in the future customers not have the possibility to buy with a enterprise agreement or other contracts which might fall out, going with a CSP or MCAE, what options do they have today to cover their on-premise licenses?
Yeah. So assuming the enterprise agreement will not be there anymore, I mean, for now, what we know is that you can still purchase on-prem products within an MPSA agreement. That's one option. On the other hand, you're also able to purchase on-prem products within CSP directly. And what is also one of the options coming up is more and more like Azure Spark, for example, where you can buy certain products as well, but is actually quite heavily forced by Microsoft to go that way. Hope that answered the question.
All right. Yes. Thank you. Another question regarding the recent price level changes, the level B, C, D in enterprise agreement, which will fall or is already fallen out by November, you mentioned. Is that all? Did you validate that already, or do you have facts here which you have proven?
Yes, I can answer that one. I mean, in reality, we got that announcement already some weeks ago, and what was quite a surprise for most of us. But since last month, since October, we do have the preview price list, and right now, since we are already in November, the price changes are effectively on the price list. So we can see that it's guaranteed it's going to be the case. What is a bit different is that in current agreements, we're still closing on the enterprise agreement. Where we are in negotiations, we can still go back to the October price list. So Microsoft allows us to do so. So what I want to say with that is, yes, we can see it in reality. It's there. But we do not execute on the new price list so far because Microsoft is still allowing us to do it on the lower price list. For sure, we will do so then. But yes, it's reality. It's there. It's proven, and it will come also in real life. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Any further questions? You can also place them in the F&A section in Teams, and we are glad to answer them to you. Doesn't seem to be the case for now. There is one. Yeah, the question is, we still need an AR for a while due to specific amendments and on-prem workloads. Yes. How do you look at the LSP market as an ex-LSP?
That's a good question. I mean, the good thing is that in regards to amendments, CSP and MCIE offers more standard amendments. So by default, they are available, but it is still the case that in the enterprise agreement, there are certain amendments which are not by default available in MCIE and CSP. And it's a bit the black box. But the experience shows now that also they are available in those new models. And we assume that there will be more clarity arising because what we can see is there is a big shift going on from enterprise agreement to CSP. So I guess that the Microsoft will work a lot within the next months to come on shaping this equality that the hurdles to move towards the new contract will effectively be lower. Because this is one of the biggest problems why also Microsoft is not closing MCIEs in every case. So as soon as those hurdles are reduced, then it will become more likely that CSP and MCIE is going to be the new model. And the on-prem workloads, that's the same. And it can be done with several ways to do so. It's either reducing price on already existing models, but it could also be increasing cost on, for example, on-prem workloads in the enterprise agreement, what would make, for example, Azure Spark more interesting. There are many different ways. There are hurdles for now, but we are pretty sure that Microsoft is working on that. And the ex-LSP perspective, just to give an insight on that as well, what we definitely see, and this is going to be the biggest change, is Microsoft is entering the market as a reseller. And this will cause a big headache for LSPs. Already does. All right. If there are any further questions, feel free. Until then, I will just move on, and Alex, interrupt me if there is anything else. So while we see that Microsoft is increasing cost year over year, we're trying to help you on optimization. So this is just a call to action. Reach out to us if you have any questions, if we can help you to support you even better. We would love to be in communication with you. Reach out or by phone, by LinkedIn, by mail, whatever feels comfortable for you. And as I already said, we are really thankful that you participate in our webinar, and we would like to reach out to you to get some feedback. And we try to improve constantly, so the feedback will help us to do so. Last but not least, thank you. It was a pleasure to have you here. If there are any questions, you can reach out to us and we will come back to you. Thank you.
There are some specific questions, but we're going to answer them individually afterwards.
Thank you very much.
Perfect. All right, thank you. Goodbye.